Okay, well, I think we can get started. I want to welcome everybody this evening. This is the third in a series of programs that's co-sponsored by Transition Town Port Washington and Landmark on Main Street. So we welcome everybody. I want to let everyone know that this is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube. I'm Paul Merkelson. I'm a longtime Port Washington resident, Transition Town Port Washington board member, and an avid composter. And some people may have seen the title of this and they said food scraps are the soil-ution. What does that even mean? Food scraps, that just seems like such an inconsequential thing. What is that about? And soil-ution, don't these people know how to spell? Well, and then you see the word soil and you say, oh, so it's got something to do with soil and food scraps. So I'm curious, what is this about? Well, recycling food scraps accomplishes many things. It keeps the food scraps out of the landfill, where it creates methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas, but it also enriches the soil. It increases the nutritional value of our food, and it helps sequester carbon in the soil. So it sounds inconsequential, but in fact, it's very consequential and important. And more and more people are aware of the impact of fossil fuels emissions on the environment, but fewer people are really aware of of what can be accomplished by effectively recycling our food scraps, which is not widely done now. So really, how do we recycle food scraps? How does that happen? Composting. Many of you know that. So composting is the recycling of organic waste, including food scraps. But it's not really waste. It's actually politically incorrect to use the term waste now, because it's not waste. It's a beneficial material that is within the cycle of the natural cycle that enriches our soil. So we consume and then we recycle and rinse and repeat. But why do we compost? Why do we need to, in terms of where we're at now? Well, 40% of the food grown in the US is really wasted. So we're buying too much. And at the same time, 37 million households are food insecure. It's really criminal, and it's something we can do something about. So when do we compost? Well, we've composted throughout history. As a matter of fact, before history, Mother Nature naturally composts. It happens. And we need to do it now, and we need to do it forever. It's the natural cycle of birth and regeneration. But what can we do as individuals? That's what we're really here to discuss. Well, we can certainly support sustainable and regenerative food production, not just the extractive industrial model that we've been living under. That can't go on. We can grow and buy what we need. We can use what we buy. That's a very important part. We can give away food that we don't use. We can repurpose food through creating soup stock, let's say, from maybe some of our vegetables that are a little past their prime, but still edible. There are other preservation techniques we can use, fermentation, preservation, and we can recycle our food scraps. Aha, okay, that's the soil-ution. So there are different ways we can do this. We can do it through home composting, and that's a very good way to do it because we're not trucking or driving our food scraps around. But a lot of people can't compost at home. We can do it through municipal composting, but some municipalities don't have a municipal compost facility. And we can do it through community composting. So tonight, we're going to see, again, 3 different communities that are at 3 different stages, let's say, of the food and organic waste recycling process. And I want to start off by introducing Ron Schulhoff and Michelle Sterling from Scarsdale. It's an amazing story. Claire Brazel, or one of our presenters and my partner in Transition Town, heard Ron and Michelle at the Long Island Organics Council. And we were really, cliche, blown away by how much they've accomplished. And it gave us so much hope and inspiration for what we can do in our town and what other towns can do. It's an amazing story. And I want to turn it over to Ron and Michelle so they can tell you about
it. Thanks, Paul. Hi, everyone. I'm Ron Schulhoff.
I'm Michelle Sterling. Hi.
We're going to share our screen in a second and show you some slides with some pictures about food scrap recycling. But before we do that, we just want to sort of set the stage on what we're going to talk about in our portion. So Michelle and I, we chair the town sustainability here in Scarsdale, And we work on all kinds of sustainability projects, from recycling to things related to water or land or the air. And what Michelle and I are really focused on are solutions. We believe in finding solutions. We believe that we're in an area that we don't need to talk too much about the problem, but find solutions that people can implement in their lives and then share that with everybody else. And so that's what we're here to do today. About 5 years ago in Scarsdale, we started the first municipal recycling program, first municipal food scrap recycling program in Westchester County in partnership with our village. So the village of Scarsdale runs this program, but we helped really get it started and we help expand it and do the outreach. And we're going to talk all about that. And we're just going to sort of go back and forth between Michelle and I just won the coin flip to start tonight. So we're going to talk about the what is this program? We're going to talk about the how do you make it happen? We're going to talk a little bit about the why. I think probably a lot of people on this call know about the why, but it's always good to talk about it so you have that vocabulary to talk with others about. And we're going to walk you through it in a way that mimics how the program works. So we're going to walk you through how it works from the resident to then the municipality, what the finances look like, what it looks like operationally, how we do outreach, and happy to answer any questions. We're happy to share all the materials that you see here tonight. So everything from the bins we're going to show you to the guides to the signs. You don't need to take a screenshot or anything. We share that with any municipality that wants to get started. And just one piece we want to touch on as you're watching this presentation is, for us, for Michelle and I, we get a lot of questions about things like metrics and tonnage. But what we really want you to keep in mind is this program, like so many sustainability programs, is about changing people's mindset. As Paul mentioned, changing people from thinking about food as waste back into a resource, changing the mindset into let's reduce our waste, let's be cognizant of it. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Michelle to talk about how this program works.
All right, thanks. So, we'll just kind of walk you quickly through the steps. And also at the end, we're going to go through some other waste reduction, new recycling programs that we've implemented as well. We call it zero waste programming. We're really trying to get down to that, to find the most beneficial use for everything that would normally go in someone's trash, to the point where you have no trash. And we're getting pretty close here in Scarsdale, so it's great. So we'll start with food scrap recycling. Everybody in the town has an opportunity to get this. Well, this is what we call a food scrap recycling starter kit. So it's the beige bin on the left that goes in your kitchen. It gets lined with a compostable liner bag. These bags are made out of corn and they will turn into soil right along with the food that goes in them. And then all the food goes into this beige bin. So basically, people who are doing backyard recycling, they know that you can put vegetarian food scraps back there. This program also takes meat, bones, fish, oils, bread, rice, pasta, spoiled food, basically all kinds of food, everything from nature, everything natural can go in there. And also soft paper. So tissues, napkins, and paper towels can't be recycled with paper recycling, but they can go in there in the bin. So can bamboo chopsticks, wooden popsicle sticks. It's really what we like to call the one dump method. You can take your plate and just everything that's on there, you just scrape it into the bin. And the reason is because this goes to a commercial composting facility. All of our municipally collected food scraps go to a commercial facility. They have huge composting piles that are, 3 stories high and an acre long. And as opposed to your backyard, so those piles get up to 170 degrees, whereas your backyard pile, which is smaller, gets up to around 100 degrees. So these piles can take a lot more in a commercial facility.
So from the resident side, you have this kit now. And just in case anyone's wondering, you do not have to buy this kit. If you say, oh, I really want one of those ceramic bins or a stainless steel bin on my counter, that's totally okay. If you don't even want to buy a bin, you want to use an old yogurt container, that's fine with us too. but you really want to make it easy. 99% of people, as Michelle mentioned, are going to get this starter kit. And Michelle and I tested every bin, every pail on the market to find out what made the most sense.
And every bag. To find out what breaks down fast and what doesn't.
So here is our happy food scrap recycler. And you can see what she's doing is she has all her food scraps in her countertop pail. Those bags make it really neat and clean and easy. So it is important, we'll talk about this a little bit later, to make sure you have a facility, whether it's a digester or a compost facility, that can take those bags. In this type of program, you really need those compostable bags.
Because people don't really want to be scrubbing and cleaning their countertop pails. Most people don't. So it really keeps people in the program.
So I'm going to let Michelle do this slide because she knows the person who dropped off her food scraps.
I'm going to quickly answer this question from the chat. Do the compostable bags leak? So they are meant to break down. They are compostable, but they will last a week. And that's what Ron and I tested for. We wanted to make sure that they would last a week without breaking or leaking. And they do. You know, after a week, we do recommend people, drop off once a week at the drop-off site. So yeah, this is my daughter right here. She modeled for us. And this is her dropping off the bin at the site. So what do? You just kind of pull up. Here at the Scarsdale Recycling Center, we use about 3 parking spaces. We could do it in less than 3, but we had some extra space there. And we pull up a bunch of bins up front. And we pull those bins up front because you really don't want, you don't want to put all 20 of your bins up front and then having little bits of food scraps dumped in each one. So we pull a few up front, the resident pulls up, they dump their bin into these larger collection bins, these toters. And then when they're full, they get moved to the back right. Just one note about these toters. They're special organics toters. They're bright green in color, as you can see. They have thick walls. They're fully sealed. They have a sealed tip bar and wheelbase. And they're made of extra thick plastic, so they won't bulge. And they have that latch. We've had our bins. This picture was taken pretty early on, but it's 5 years later. And as Paul and Claire can attest to, 5 years later, we are still using these same bins. So they last, and there's no smell, and it's just a very neat, clean, easy operation for both residents and municipal staff. There's virtually nothing to do.
And that piece is just really key as you're thinking about implementing this in your town or your community. We need to make this really easy for the residents to do. But we also need to make it feasible and pretty easy for the municipality. All our municipalities have a lot going on. They have a lot of work. Their staff are busy. And part of the success about this program is the buy-in that we got from the head of our DPW all the way down to the staff worker that is managing these bins on a day-to-day basis. Now, we didn't hire anyone additional for this program, or I should say the village didn't hire anyone additional, because as Michelle mentioned, there's not much work for them to do here. What they really need to do is check on the bins once a day, wheel up empty bins, take any full ones and move them to the back. And so some communities don't have a recycling center that's staffed, or they don't even have a recycling center in their town. That's totally fine. We've found many places to put this, and we've worked in many different situations, and we can totally make it work in any of those. But we always want to make sure that nobody feels like they're getting a whole bunch of new work dumped on them. So we talked a little bit about how this works from the resident side. They've dropped off. Now the sanitation staff has moved the bins. And of course, people always ask, well, what does it cost to run this program? So we've talked about how it's operationally feasible, it's good, easy for the residents. So what does it cost? Well, there's 3 types of costs. The first is your startup expenses, and that's really to buy these bins. These bins, we suggest starting with 20 of them. It will obviously depend a little bit on the size of your community, but as a ballpark to start with 20, they're about $125 each. The second piece is this big sign you see in the background here. It's about a 4 by 5 foot sign, and it's got all the accepted items and some instructions on there. So that's a few $100s. So the startup expenses is about $2,500 to $3,000. A key part of that is it's not $50,000. It's not $100,000. Sometimes government officials can be concerned when they're starting a new program. Well, if we have this huge capital investment, what if it doesn't work? Well, we know it works now. We've helped over 50 communities from suburban settings to urban to rural get started and be successful. But if there's any concern about that, there's not a big capital outlay. The second piece is your operating expenses.
Wait, just one more note on that, Ron. Sorry to cut you. Just one more thing about that is that it's also portable. So sometimes people are like, well, we don't have the right site. We could start it here, but it might not be right. And with this program, the bins are on wheels, they're stackable. If you want to start at a couple parking spots by your village hall, and then eventually you'll move it to somewhere else that's more ideal, you can do that. Because it's really just moving a sign and a bunch of bins on wheels. Sorry to interrupt, Ron.
No.
This is what we do anyway.
So the operating expenses, this is going to depend, a little bit on where you are. But again, this is not a $50,000 or $100,000 a year program. We're talking about a $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a year program. And most of that cost is in the weekly pickup. So how do these bins get picked up? In most communities, they hire a private hauler that handles food scraps for other places. It could be restaurants, it could be other municipalities, and they'll come by once a week and they'll tip these toters into their truck. So this is not on the sanitation staff. This is done by a private hauler. That's usually about $5,000 a year. We also line these big bins with compostable liners. They're the exact same liner bag as the small bin, just much bigger. And this just helps keep the bins neat. Again, people don't have to use compostable bags at home. 99% of people do, but some people say, no, I don't even need that. Or they might have a lot of food that expired, or they had a party and they just want to dump it all right into the big bins at the drop-off site. That's okay. That's why we line those bins. So that's a few $100s. And then the last piece is what we called reimbursed outlays. So this is money that the municipality is going to outlay up front, but then we'll get back. And that is two things. The first are those starter kits. So to make this program really easy for residents, you don't want to send them online or to a store to buy that starter kit. You want the municipality to offer it. So they buy it in bulk and then they sell it at cost to homeowners. That does two things. The first is it keeps the cost down. So that starter kit, if you buy online, is about $50 for both those bins. If you buy it in bulk, like we do, the village gets them for both for $20. It's actually less than 20 because the 20 includes a roll of compostable bags, the stickers that you saw on them, and a guide. The other thing that's important is that you don't want to send somebody online and then have them buy a bin that's not so great, because then that's not a good experience for them at home. We tested all the bins to make sure that they would be a really good user experience. The second piece is that the town also sells the compostable bags for the same reasons. We get them much cheaper. They're about $2 a roll. And also that we've tested them and know they all work. So we just wanted to quickly go over the finances just because some people ask us about this. And now I'm going to hand it to Michelle to talk about compost. You're on mute, Michelle.
Sorry. This is one of the composting facilities that we bring our food scraps to. So you can see the pile on the right has, it looks like it has stuff in it. You can see little bits of the compostable bags that are still in there. And then on the left, literally 60 days later, or really 90 days till it's fully done. But even after 60 days, they screen it and it looks, it's beautiful, dark, rich compost. So that's literally what's happening with all of Scarsdale's food scraps and the 30 other towns in Westchester County and all around us. We have we've done a lot of outreach and education with respect to and promotion for the program. We've done all kinds of presentations with houses of worship and at village events, basically anywhere in the first few years of the program where there was a where there were going to be village residents. We showed up with a stack of kits and a clipboard, and we signed people up. And we're still getting people that are signing up. So we're able to help you with your outreach by giving you all kinds of ideas. There's really no one silver bullet. It's not just like one letter to the paper or one banner. There are lots of different things that we did that make it happen.
Just a key point about this is that this can't be something that is on the municipality to do. This really needs to come from the volunteers, from a sustainability committee. So if a town were to come to us and say, we're ready to go, we're going to set this up and go, and we'll say, okay, do you have a group of volunteers ready? If they don't have that set up yet, now most do already because they work on so many other sustainability initiatives. But if they didn't have that ready, we would say, let's pause till we get those volunteers in place, because that's where those signups are going to come from being out in the community or being at the recycling center.
So this is this is one of the events where it's called Free Compost Give Back Day, where we get 25 plus yards of compost from the facility that turns our food scraps into compost. And we let residents take a bucket. So we let residents who are in the program take it. We let residents who are not in the program take it. It's a huge recruitment day for us. We get a ton of signups that day. It's a way for us to say thank you to the residents who are doing it. And it's also a way to show everyone what compost is. Not everybody knows, and to point it to this beautiful black pile of compost and say, this was your food scrap 60 days ago. So it's a great day and a happy day at our recycling center.
You can see this is just Michelle and I under the tent doing outreach. This is a great event to sign people up. We usually sign up another 30, 40 people who maybe they've moved here and haven't registered yet, or they're just learning about it. So we're always getting new signups. And just lastly, back to that changing the mindset, and then we're going to wrap up. This is really what this is all about. We are trying to close the loop. When people ask us, boy, what's your goal? How many tons do you want to get to? We always tell them, well, we want to get to 0. I mean, that's really what this is about. We want to stop wasting food. Now, there's always going to be food scrap, so we're always going to have composting programs. But we want to close the loop, get this out of the trash, get this into a beneficial use, and get it back into people's hands where they can use it, and to keep compost local. We all buy so much compost in this area, and if we don't make it locally, we're just going to have to import it from somewhere else, which adds to trucking in compost, and we'd rather just do it locally. We did just want to touch a couple very quickly, and we're just going to run through this very fast if anybody has any questions about this, and then we're going to take questions. Here's a bunch of other things we've added recently. We've added plastic bag and film recycling. We partnered with Trex decking, and it gets made into new decking. We have eyeglass recycling, textile recycling, furniture donation. Michelle, I'll let you do the rest.
We have cork recycling gets made into flooring and footbeds. Cooking oil recycling gets converted to biodiesel. Book recycling, because books can't be recycled, with paper recycling. It's book donation and recycling for those that can't be donated, and a take it or leave it shed for used or but still usable items.
And lastly, we also added battery recycling recently, and it's not just for rechargeables, but regular alkaline as well. So those don't have to go into the trash. So I'm just gonna, oops, sorry. I want to put our contact info up real quick. In case anybody wants to reach out to us, this is our email, and we'll put this in the chat as well. And we're happy to take some questions. Stop sharing.
So
actually,
we should look in the chat. I think there were some questions in the chat, Ron.
Yeah, so one question, the first question was about from the town of Islip about adding food scrap to the yard waste compost site because of contamination. So that's a great question. So I think we need to tackle this question in 2 parts. One is adding food scraps to yard waste at a local site, and then the second is contamination. So let's start with contamination first. Do we have contamination? And the shorter answer is no. And how do we not have contamination? All that outreach that we do, we never just hand somebody a kit or put it on somebody's doorstep, or just let them buy it. Even if you buy it from the town, you're going to get an overview on how this program works. And that's really important. Even if it's just 3 to 5 minutes, we need to tell people on how this works.
Or just
Now,
3 to
having
5
said-
sentences.
Even 3 to 5 sentences.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, will there be a plastic bag that gets in there, or a chip bag, or a container? It's going to happen. I mean, we're collecting tons and tons, literally tons of food scraps. It's going to happen. The facilities that we go to, commercial facilities, screen that out. They can totally handle that. If you're going to bring it to a yard waste facility, it's just a question of whether they have that screening mechanism. You know, that is one of the reasons that we do like for the municipality to handle the pickup of it. Just like no municipality actually does the recycling of paper or commingled, they send it to somewhere else. This allows us to get it to a place that has that infrastructure. So we would love to mix it with yard waste. If they can, that'd be fantastic. But you have to deal with the compostable bags and all that other stuff. So maybe we'd have to know a little bit more, but that's why we like to work with a commercial compost facility.
Somebody
I
just
think-
said, should we answer the question about the books, or if we're out of time, it's okay?
No, you're not out of time. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, so just the question about where do the books go? So we partnered with, it's actually a private company, and they sell the books called Discover Books. They sell the books, they have a website. They donate what they can't sell. And sometimes if the book is too damaged and they can't sell it or donate it, then it needs to be recycled. But municipalities, counties, they don't have a facility to recycle books. And books can't be recycled because of the glue on the spine. So they actually send it to a facility that cuts the glue off the spine and also tears the hard covers off. So they truly do get either sold, donated, or recycled. That's where the books go.
Joy asked, what percentage of residents compost? So I think we're at about probably about 1,500 homes right now. We have about 5,000 homes in Scarsdale. This is a voluntary program. In Scarsdale, your trash is picked up as part of municipal services. You don't pay extra for it. It's part of your taxes. We get twice a week back a driveway trash pickup, but still 1,500 homes have already signed up. And the other key piece to that is that we sign up new homes every single week. So it's not like a bunch started and then we've sort of been at that number. We just keep growing it every week, still 5 years in.
I think Claire had a question she wanted to ask.
Yeah, can I do it live on the screen? Okay. Yeah, I was interested, I'm going to say in the control factor. You said, oh my goodness, this could be put in a parking lot somewhere. And I know our municipal waste management commissioner was concerned that it needed to be manned the whole time. And we needed a person at wherever this facility was going to be. And I'm just, if you could talk to that, is it something that we don't need it manned? Is it something that, it could work with just 1 day a week drop off so that we just have it manned 1 day a week? If you could talk to that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So in terms of it being staffed, ideally, there would be somebody once a day that goes to the location. So let's say it's in a parking lot outside of your village hall. I'm just throwing that out there. I have no idea what your village hall looks like. Somebody should go there and, check on it, right? If the bins are full, you would want to make sure they're closed and then wheel them to the back and then wheel up empty ones. We definitely have towns with unstaffed sites, but where there's somebody from the DPW that does basically a drive-by once a day for, 5 minutes, just to check on things. That is ideal. So we happen to have a recycling center. Some towns have recycling centers that have somebody there already. So you don't need to hire someone new to staff it. There's really not much to do, but yeah. So that's basically the two ways it works, either in a staff facility or in an unstaffed location, but somebody goes by and checks on it. To your question about the 1 day a week, I should just say this. There are a lot of families with 2 working parents. We do find it important to have something that has at least some Saturday hours. So even though 1 day a week wouldn't be ideal, it would be better to have it, several days a week. But if it's only going to be 1 day, it should ideally be a Saturday, because otherwise, and then if it's closed off the rest of the time, otherwise, how do non-working people get there for the drop off? I don't know if you want to add anything, Ron, but.
I wanted to ask you to elaborate a little bit on the issue of volunteers. I mean, whenever we talk among ourselves or we talk to other people who are trying to organize in the community, one of the key things is getting volunteers involved. So can you shed a little bit of light on, like, when you started, what's that? You talked about having volunteers ready. So you're showing the municipality that, you're going to get signups, but also those people are going to be doing some of the work that you're doing to get this, to build awareness and do the other initial steps. So how many people is that in Scarsdale or a representative town? And what are the kind of things that those volunteers would be doing initially? And then second part to the question, I know you two are like incredibly efficient and productive, but you're not the only two working on it as it's on an ongoing basis. So if you can give us a little bit of idea of how many volunteers you need to kind of maintain it now.
Sure, that's a great question. There's sort of 3 layers of volunteers you want. The first is 2 to 3 people who are going to be your core volunteers that are owning this program. So in Scarsdale, that's Michelle and I. That doesn't mean we're doing all the work, but that means that when we have that compost give back day, we're making sure that we get volunteers for it, that people know about it, that if we need to reach out to the library and say, hey, it's going to be a beautiful Saturday, we want to come outside for the day, we'll do that. The sustainability committee in Scarsdale is 9 people. So that's sort of your next layer. Those are people that we really know how this program works. So if Michelle and I couldn't be in an event, they're there helping out. We know that they're going to be at more events. The third piece, and this really comes from the people that sign up. So many people that sign up for this program will reach out to us later and say, boy, how can I help out? This is so exciting. And we'll say to them, they may not want to be on the committee full time, but they'll say, I'd love to help you guys. And so we'll tell them, you know what? We have an event coming up. Let me give you an example. We have a music festival coming up on June 4th. Anyone on this call is welcome to come volunteer with us. We're going to have 3,000 people. Scarsdale organizes it, and we're making it zero waste. So we need 60 volunteers to man all of the zero waste stations. So we reach out to all these folks that have reached out to us and say, who can give us 1 hour, 2 hours? Well, all of a sudden, when you have all these people answer back, instead of one person sitting at the bin for 6 hours straight, you just rotate around and you'll get that. So the short answer to that is you need a couple people to be the key leaders. You want sort of a smaller group that those 2 people or 3 people can really lean on. And then you're going to have a much wider audience that you're going to call on and say, we're going to this party in the park, this concert. Who can give us an hour to do outreach? And 5 people will write back. I'll let Michelle, I think there was a second part. I'm going to let Michelle take it.
Or sometimes, we'll go to different people, that have different skill sets. Some people are good writers. We'll say, can you put an article in the paper or a letter to the editor in our local paper? Or somebody's good with graphics. Can you, or a bunch of kids, can you create a TikTok and post it on social media? So we'll sort of like tap into the different people who've said, this program is great. We love it. It's changed our life. And we'll say, okay, great. Help us and you can. What's your skill set? And I have to also say, we've been really pleasantly surprised. Like sometimes we'll look at the sign up sheet from the office and we'll see that somebody, in the beginning, we'll see somebody bought like 10 or 15 kits. We're like, what are they doing with 10 or 15 kits? And then they'll say, well, I'm having a big barbecue. And every single person who's coming to my barbecue, I'm like, going to sign them up. And we've had people do that, like buy numbers of them. We went to our real estate agents in town and we said to our real estate agents, hey, you know, like when you sell a home and you get them a platter or whatever you get them as your welcome gift we said, welcome gift to Scarsdale, give them a food scrap kit. And a lot of our real estate brokers, when people move in now, they say, this is what we do here. This is our town. And people are like, oh, this is great. And they get a kit as their welcome gift. You know, it's just stuff like that that we've been working on over the years, and it really grows the program.
You guys have just done so much. It's so inspirational, and it just, you know, it's so it seems like a massive undertaking to me, because I'm in a community where we're just starting out. I just have one final question, because again, within the structure of this session here tonight, we're looking at 3 communities, but we're all at different stages of facing challenges. So looking back, what was the big challenge that you had to face when you were getting started?
I think for us, the biggest challenge was that we were the first. So when we tried to explain this to our elected officials and our DPW, we didn't really have somewhere to point. I mean, New York City had a program going, but to really say in this suburban town, this is what it would look like. This is how it would work. It's going to work for the staff. And that took a lot of trust. We've done a lot of other projects with them in the past, so there was a lot of trust there. And our elected officials took a leap of faith, and it really worked out. The great thing for everybody on this call is that not only can you come and visit, we give tours all the time in Scarsdale, but you can bring your elected officials, you can bring your sanitation staff, your Department of Public Works. And every time that somebody from a Department of Public Works comes out and we give them the full tour, we show them everything, they always leave there saying, I thought this was so much more complicated than it really is. And to us, that was the biggest hurdle, but now we've sort of broken that barrier for everybody else here. And we give tours all the time. So I'm going to put our contact info in the chat so everybody can reach out if they want.
And while you're doing that, I should also say, like, we purposely kept it really inexpensive because we didn't want people to say, oh, Scarsdale can do that, but you know, our town can't because we don't have a budget. I mean, this is literally a $2,000 to $3,000 program. You know, it's not much. Think of the services, and this is a service that's open to everyone. You know, there's a lot of services that towns do that just are open to like a small percentage of the population, support services. This, anyone and everyone can participate in for basically a minimal amount of money. That was also very important to us, and it's easily replicable. Plus, we'll help. We help every town.
That's fantastic, and we're going to take you up on that. I mean, it still seems daunting, but you're so inspiring what you've accomplished. But every community faces different challenges. And again, when we structured this program, we wanted to also include a community that, you know, we're on Long Island. Long Island's a different place than Westchester. And we face some unique challenges here, but some communities face challenges that others don't. So I want to introduce my friend Monique Fitzgerald, who is from the town of Brookhaven. And in Brookhaven, Monique and her colleagues face some very unique challenges, some existing situations, some direct opposition, and some grassroots organizing that they're tackling. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Monique Fitzgerald. Welcome, Monique.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Thanks for the introduction. So, Hilda, if you want to put the slides up, I can start my presentation. So my name, as Paul said, is Monique Fitzgerald. I use the pronouns she and her. And for accessibility purposes, I am a Black and Indigenous woman. I have basically shoulder length hair that is currently red. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our composting program later on in the slides, but basically how we got there, we started from a place of organizing around the Brookhaven landfill. And so that's how we come into the composting arena. So you can go to the next slide. So I will like to start off with a land acknowledgement. So to honor the relationship between land and First Nations, past and present. We do a land acknowledgement. So where I currently am, where the landfill is, and the fence line community to the landfill is Untitled Nation land. And the land was unceded from the Untitled Nation in the 1600s, or close to 1660, through colonialism, terror, and that ushered in a white working class group of individuals between that time from 1660 to about 1960. So just giving you a brief history of the North Belport area. So after the 1960s, which was about 300 years later, North Belport went under another change from a majority white working class to a majority Black working class community. The Black migration from the South for economic purposes to work on duck and potato farms in the eastern end of Long Island led to this migration. And also there was forced migration from the North Shore of Long Island from the people that we call this from Settlecott Nation, which is the nation that I'm a tribal member of. Our base is in Setauket, which is, again, the North Shore of what we call now the town of Brookhaven. So there, I don't know if most people understand or know, there's a well-known fact that Long Island is one of the most segregated areas or regions of the country. And North Belport was convened this way. One of the most infamous points of that is witnessed through a blockbusting case in North Belport that happened in the 1960s. Blockbusting is when a realty company comes in to a white, predominantly white area and basically uses fear tactics to say that minorities or Black people are moving in. And that's what happened during that time. And the blockbusting case in North Belport was the first case in New York State. So even though that went through the court system, North Belport still became predominantly Black, Indigenous, and by the 1970s, Latinx community moved in from Central and South America. So you can move on to the next slide. Thank you. So a little history on the landfill. So the Brookhaven landfill is a 300-foot monster that lives to the fence line of North Belport, and it was constructed in 1974. So it's been here for nearly 50 years. This landfill was constructed and placed at the backyard of the North Belport community with the promise that the landfill would be closed down in the 80s. So here we are in 2022 and the landfill is still not closed. So what happened in the 80s? In 1983, we got a Long Island landfill law that says that we will no longer landfill our solid waste. So with that, instead of closing down the landfill, the town of Brookhaven went into contract with a company called Covanta, and in particular, Covanta Hempstead, where there's an incinerator that burns solid municipal waste. So 1989, there was a contract from between Covanta and the town of Brookhaven that said, we will take your waste and you will accept our ash. And so we've been dealing with that contract since 1989. And then further 1990 to 2020, sorry about that, to 2020, we were just inundated with landfill expansion after expansion after expansion. But in 2021, we were actually able to have a successful stoppage of an expansion plan to our landfill. So you can go to the next slide. So yeah, a brief history of the Brookhaven Landfill Action and Remediation Group. So this is the group that is the host of the composting program that I'll be talking about a little bit later. And this is the group that is organizing against this landfill. So we call it BLARG, but it stands for Brookhaven Landfill Action and Remediation Group. We started our group in the spring of 2020. At that time, we were as neighbors, community members, friends, we started leading protests in our local area against the George Floyd murder. And during that time, we also came to realize that we also need to protect Black lives, not only when something happens nationally or in another state, we need to protect Black lives locally. So as we were convening, we immediately realized that the landfill was one of those things that was affecting our community in a major way, and that we needed to organize against it. So we started a working group to do that. And soon as we convened this working group, our research and through community historians, people who have been in the neighborhood just as long as the landfill, helped shape our orientation to the work. And we found that one of the key principles that was missing from the advocacy efforts that has convened since the beginning, before the landfill even came to our neighborhood, was there was a missing piece of environmental justice. So that was our framing. That was what we needed to interject into the advocacy efforts to close down the landfill. So as we started, we became aware of two things quickly. One of the things that we became aware of was the expansion plan that I just spoke of, that we were actually able to shut down. So in 2020, we started that campaign to shut down that expansion plan. And by 2021, we successfully got the town to dismiss that proposal. And then the second thing we became aware of was a whistleblower case with Covanta Hempstead. So as I said before, town of Brookhaven and Covanta Hempstead is under contract to for Covanta to accept our waste and for us to accept the ash from Covanta that comes out of burning the municipal waste. So we reached out to the attorneys of that case. We were able to speak with Reed Super at the time, and just to follow the updates and, you know, organize to help get the word out about the potential risks that we were facing here in Brookhaven and also in Hempstead. So those are the two things that we were made aware of quickly, and we decided again to focus on environmental justice and being an action-based working group. So next slide. So for us, just in general, environmental justice really means that we're able to say that we're here to protect Black lives. And when you look at Bellport, as I stated before, we're a community of Black, Indigenous, and Latinx folks by and large, and we're a very diverse community of people who are systematically oppressed. So this landfill has been with us for 50 years. We've been bearing the brunt of the toxins from the landfill for 5 decades. And our basic demands against this landfill is to, one, honor the promises to close the Brookhaven landfill as we were promised before it was even constructed. And now at this present time, we have a promise for the landfill to close in 2024, even though we have no evidence that it will be closed at that time. Our second demand pretty much is to reject the settlement case against Covanta, and I will get into that a little bit before I get into the composting program. And then our third demand is to pursue a community-driven zero waste plan. So like presenters before for us, we are in the pursuit of zero waste management, and we believe that zero waste is attainable. And then our next, you can stay on that same slide, yeah. The landfill needs to, one, be closed down. It also needs to be cleaned up. We can't just leave a closed landfill without remediation. And we also believe that we are owed reparations from the harms that we've faced for 50 years. And then to reimagine the space. We were always promised that the landfill would turn into a park or some other kind of space that would be beneficial to the community. So we believe these solutions can come from the community, and that's our pursuit. So you can go to the next slide. Now here with the environmental justice. So through research, we come to the understanding that there's 17 principles of environmental justice. And with the aim of reparations for harms, one of those principles is environmental justice protects the rights of victims of environmental injustice to receive full compensation and reparations for damages, as well as quality health care. So again, we do not believe that we are out of our realm for demanding reparations, and also quality health care. In North Belport, our community has the second highest admissions for, or ER visits for asthma in the county. So that is very alarming. And the community that has the highest ER visits for asthma is Wyandanch, which is also a community that looks exactly like Belport, and also is next to an incinerator and landfill. So you can go to the next slide. So what does it mean for what does environmental justice mean? It refers to the fact that people who live, work, and play in the US most polluted environments are commonly people of color and poor. Environmentally just policies call for fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, in respect to environmental laws, regulations, and policies. And that's just basic rights that we believe that everyone should be afforded. And there's no reason why North Belport residents or people of North Belport should be any different. So what does it mean about fair treatment? Fair treatment means no group or people should bear a disproportionate share of negative environmental consequences resulting from industrial, governmental, and commercial operations or policies. And when you're dealing with a landfill, you're dealing with all of these. You have the corporations who are contributing to the waste. You have the governmental officials who are governing the policies of the landfill, and the waste industry as a whole. So here's just, you can go to the next slide. And then the next slide, sorry. So here's just a newspaper clipping of some advocates against the landfill in 1980. So again, it's just showing that we have been advocating against the landfill as a whole since it pretty much came to existence. You can go to the next slide. So here's the big headline between Covanta and Brookhaven, their trash for ash agreement that leads to where we are now, where the landfill is generating $66 million gross revenue and about $30 million net revenue for the town of Brookhaven, which is about 25% of the town of Brookhaven's budget. So what is the gravity of this this issue? You know, it's a revenue generating monster. And so whenever you're dealing with revenue and you're dealing with people who are economically oppressed, then you can understand why this has gone on for so many years. And you can go to the next slide. Thank you. All right, so how much waste do we accept at the landfill? So I said that the landfill is about 300 feet tall. It's one of the tallest structures on Long Island. And we accept 350,000 tons of ash and 750 tons of construction and demolition debris. And we accept this from Covanta's ash incinerator, and they accept the waste from the town of Brookhaven, as I stated before, the town of Hempstead, town of Huntington, the town of Smithtown, and Islip. So 5 towns across Long Island are being trucked from their homes or their neighborhoods to Hempstead, where the waste is being burned and then trucked again back to Brookhaven. So it's a lot of emissions, a lot of unnecessary transporting to also then be burned in a place in Hempstead where this is also releasing toxins into the air in Hempstead. So we're basically polluting the whole island when we're dealing with our waste. And you can go to the next slide. So what's at stake? Basically, the landfill is, as you can see in this slide, the arrow is pointing to that little red dot. That's where the landfill is. That's where North Belport is. And North Belport has the lowest life expectancy on Long Island. And we point this out, and I point this out when I do my presentations, because as you can see, the neighboring communities that don't have the diversity that we have in North Belport have much higher life expectancies, even though they are right next to the landfill as well. So there's a disproportionate effect that's happening, and that's where what we need to focus on when we are talking about the landfill and waste justice. So you can go to the next slide. So this is just another graphic to show that the landfill is next to the North Belport. That purple area is what New York State DEC has identified as a potential environmental injustice area or a potential justice area. So there's purple areas throughout this map, but North Belport and the landfill is right on top of each other. So you can go to the next slide. And now this map is showing where Covanta Hempstead is. It is right between 2 potentially potential environmental justice areas. One of Newcastle, which is in West Hempstead, and Newcastle is also a BIPOC community. Then you have Hempstead, the town of Hempstead, also a BIPOC community that neighbors the Covanta facility. And you can go to that next slide. So here again, just showing you how much traveling goes into our waste distribution or our waste journey. And we have to do something to reduce this, this pathway. You can go to the next slide. So where does all of that end up? So after the ash gets burnt in town of Hempstead, it comes back to this area, which to me seems more like a beltway of overburdening of a community. So on the bottom arrow in this map is where North Belport is. And then if you go up to the next arrow, you'll see where there's a truck terminal positioned to be right next to and inside a potential environmental justice area. So all of that shaded area is places of concern that have already been identified by governmental agencies. Then the star next to that is the landfill. And we have right next to that where they want to rezone, or they have rezoned that forestry area to be light industrial. So they're looking to put warehouses in that area. And then across the street from the landfill, that large cylinder shape is the 280-acre waste transfer station that they are proposing and trying to get approved to ship our waste out from Long Island to another community that looks exactly like ours. So our group is against any landfilling anywhere, not just in our backyard. So we do not want a waste transfer station, especially one that chopped down so many trees, because that whole area there was woods, and now it just has been demolished. And so that is going to be what they're looking to do, is ship our waste out. And we're against that as well. We are, as I said before, and as the presenter said before, we need to focus on zero waste and zero waste solutions. So that small dot next to that large, small circle next to the large cylinder is the Caithness, where there's a power plant, a natural gas power plant located. So it's just a cumulative effect that's happening and overburdening our community. And, you know, this is just basically an onslaught of terror. So you can go to the next slide. And for some of the folks from Transition Town, they were there last week, you know, in that whiz area where there's nothing but trucks and trucks and trucks going through that area. It's just really, it's really terrorizing actually to be in that space. So a little bit more about the Covanta whistleblower case, just to bring into the connection between the two areas, is that in 2017.
Michelle, Monique?
Yep.
It's Paul. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we've got a hard stop and I still have to get Claire in. So you have so much important stuff to talk about, and I want to see if we can get you back to talk about it, because I think this detail and the process and the challenge you face are really important to spend the time on, and I'm not sure that we have it all here. So what I'd like to do, if you can stay with us, you know, we'll try to cut some time off the end and get some questions and get some focus on what you've talked about. I hope that's okay, and you know, we're certainly going to give the time that this issue needs, and I want to thank you for you know, for the fight that you're undertaking here. I mean, it really shows the problems that we face as an island and as a nation. So if that's okay, I'm going to turn it over to Claire, who's going to talk a little bit about what's happening here in Port Washington, and then we'll try to tie this all together at the end before we have to cut out. Again, I apologize, Monique, but we're going to get to finish this.
Sure.
Claire, do you want to start?
Okay. Hilder, I don't know if you could put up the first slide. Ooh. Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Claire Brazel and I manage the community compost at the Science Museum of Long Island. As far as I know, it's the first community compost in the area. It's a little difficult coming after Monique, but I must say we've been, I'm going to say our compost, they have a compost that she wasn't talking about. I feel like we're sister compost areas. She's come to visit our community compost, and last week we went to go visit hers in I guess it was North Bellport. So we're here to help each other. In our case, I hope at the end, what I'm trying to do is really hammer home the fact that our food scraps are 20% of our garbage, 20% of our garbage, which is a huge amount. And if 20% of our garbage was diverted into composting, we would be reducing a lot of the garbage that's going, I mean, a good percentage of the garbage that's going to the incinerator and onwards and ash to the Brookhaven landfill. So this is something that all of us can do. It's easy to do. And I hope that at the end of my talk, I've got everybody who's not composting coming to speak to me, speak to Paul about how they can get started composting. When I was putting this presentation together, I was a little stumped with what title to give myself. So I settled on community composting enthusiast because it's just what I am. I mean, as soon as I learned about it, I was just hooked and I wanted to do more and do more for my town. Next slide. Before I get into community composting, I want to tell you my origin story as it relates to climate change and composting. Those of you who know me personally know that I co-own a small ancestral property on the outskirts of Rome. It is surrounded by vineyards and olive trees, some of which you see here. That's my brother and our 2 dogs. We produce and market our small production of extra virgin olive oil. I go to Italy twice a year and always during the harvest in October. I can remember 2 years in the last 10 when we did not have enough olives to make oil because of issues related to global warming and climate change. To make a long story short, when you are involved in agriculture, your life and livelihood are ruled by the unpredictability of the weather and the harvest. Now on to composting. After we formed,
Claire, I would like to come back to Monique, so if we could just make this super brief, because
Okay.
I feel like that was not a good transition.
Okay, all right.
And so
All right,
if
let
we
me
could
go to the
just-
next one. Okay, so
Yeah,
I'm gonna skip over that. Okay, so this is the photo of our community compost facility at the Science Museum. Go back. Go back one. We will be forever grateful for the use of their land and the partnership with the SMLI Board of Directors. We promised that we would run an operation that wouldn't smell or attract unwanted pests, and we delivered. Since the launch, we have collected and returned to the earth 8,200 pounds of food, thus diverting it from the waste stream. That's over 4 tons. We launched the community, next slide. We launched the community compost in October 2020. A lot happens there. On Saturday morning, it is a buzz with activity, both from the humans and from the hungry worms. We began with 10 families and now have 22 active families. We would like to grow to around 30 families. On a given weekend, 8 to 10 families on average bring their collected food scraps or greens and weigh them. They put the greens and browns into the tumbler and give it some turns. The average drop-off amount is 13 pounds per family per week. All right, so here's just various photos of our community composts. If everybody can see how it works. It's just it's a family affair. The upper right is Stella, who is turning the compost. Next slide. The community compost at SMLI was highlighted in 6-page Newsday Long Island Life section, along with other organics activists, doers, and entrepreneurs, of which a few of them are on this call. We are all trying to spread the knowledge and change our collective behavior away from the throwaway culture that we're living in. We're just dipping our toes in and have a long way to go. Next slide. Yeah, these are just some more pictures. The only thing I wanted to really show here is that, I don't know if you could see in the middle one, but we have a big, I'm going to say volunteer zucchini growing there. And someone actually grew tomatoes from tomatoes that started out growing in this compost. Okay, so next slide. So we invite you to join the composting revolution. Composting is a wholesome outdoor activity that regenerates Mother Earth. It diverts 20% of food waste from landfills and incinerators. It decreases household garbage output to 1 day or fewer bags per week. In Port Washington, we have 3 days of garbage pickup a week, which is just uncalled for. It means no more smelly garbage in the kitchen, and it's a family activity that connects us to our community and is something greater than ourselves. So I don't know if you want to go to the next step slide or not, but that's sort of the.
No, I would like to go back to Monique. I hope she's still
Okay.
with us because
Okay,
I
go
think it's
back.
better to go into overtime. So this was simply like a little segue into what is possible in terms of managing waste, but I think we were at the very critical.
Yeah, we'll tie it together at the end.
Yeah.
So Monique, do you want to pick it up again?
Okay, sure.
Thanks. Sorry for the stop and start, but we're all working together here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know it's a lot to manage. So where was I?
Everyone has a lot. Everyone has a lot to say. So, but I cut you off, so I apologize. But pick it up. Go ahead.
All right, no problem. All right, so I was talking about the Covanta whistleblower case and how that is something that is affecting both us at Brookhaven and also the folks in Hempstead. So I just wanted to highlight that fact that we are in a critical moment with that case, where Garden City, the town of, you can go to the next slide. And you can go to the next slide. We are at a critical a moment for that case where the Garden City and the town of Hempstead are looking to settle that case. And so us as a group, we are organizing against that settlement because we believe that if that case settles, then any accountability that Covanta has for the residents of the town of Hempstead or town of Brookhaven, they will be relinquished of that. So that is the critical moment and the critical impasse we are at right now between our two towns. So you can go to the next slide. And yeah, you can go to the next slide. We'll skip that part. So Brookhaven Landfill Action and Remediation Group, the action in action, right? So things that we have worked on was organizing community engagement to get people to public hearings, virtual action hours, which we conducted for that Covanta case. Protests, as I spoke about before, we also conducted a waste audit, which we believe is a very critical piece when we're trying to decide or find out what our waste stream looks like. So we did 6 garbage districts in the town of Brookhaven. We analyzed the garbage and with a visual waste audit, and we saw what's in our garbage. What are we throwing out? So that's a key point that I believe that we need to all start at. And then we also have done marches. We produced a documentary about our organizing efforts and our battle cry for environmental justice. And what we all are here for is that we started a pilot program last summer for 90 days, community composting pilot. And we called it the anti-landfill community compost because we wanted to make sure that folks understood that we are composting to save lives, that we are composting as a critical action and a radical action to ensure the safety of the people in our community. So, yeah, we like to all understand that composting is something that's easy, something that could be fun, something that could draw in folks from all different types of backgrounds. But we also need to understand that this is something that we need to do as a sustainability practice, and to focus on the fact that there are people in this system that are oppressed and need this more than anyone else. So that's where our lens with our composting came into play. And so we were able to divert about 1,200 pounds of waste, food scrap waste, with about 20 families throughout these 90 days. And it was great to be in the garden. This picture right here shows some of our volunteers and members of BLARG chopping up the food scraps that folks have brought to us. But it's like I was telling Paul and Claire and Margaret, who came to visit, it was like our water cooler. We would get around that area and just discuss our organizing efforts. We would discuss, what was in the composting this week. And, it was a place that we could educate the community ourselves and be in community with our neighbors. It's a high visibility area where folks just come by and see us out there, and they, inquire about what we're doing, and we're able to be accessible to the community. We're able to answer questions and educate folks in an environment that is non-traditional to how we see education. So you can go to the next slide. So these are just some pictures of different actions that we've taken, waste audits, protests, composting programs, and there's a weigh station so that we can weigh the compost as it comes in. And we do our composting in a community garden. It's the Bill Neal and Chris Hobson community garden. And those two individuals are no longer with us. And it's great that the space is such a beautiful space to honor two beautiful people. So it's been holistically great to be in that space and to be able to compost with our neighbors and friends. So I do have like a little clip. I don't know, Hilda, are you able to go to the next slide and click on that link? This is the documentary that we put together. It's just a small, short trailer from Khadija Yanni, who started the community composting, the community garden back 10 plus years ago. And this was from one of the screenings that we had recently. I don't know if you can hear it.
Oh, I'd have to do a special share.
Oh, that's fine. But the pictures say you can see the community garden and where we do our composting program. And that right there is Khadija Yan. And how we've created spaces for our community to come in with the children. And it's just been a beautiful process amongst the turmoil that is why we're here. So
yeah, we'll share that the movie with everyone who signed up, and also resources like call to action.
Yeah, so if you go to the last slide, which you'll see many links to ways to follow the things that I already spoke about, how to get on our email list, where to find us on social media, ways to donate to our efforts. And if you were interested in following what we're doing with the Covanta case, we have a toolkit for those efforts. So yeah, that
Yes.
is
It's
the
amazing.
totality of what we're doing, or at least a snippet of the totality of what we're doing.
Monique, it's really impressive and inspiring. I mean, you know, the fight is such a big fight, and that to carry on that fight, and at the same time to be able to build in the community, you know, and I think the intersection between, you know, political and social justice, environmental justice, and environmental action, you know, it's something that we all have to be aware of. I mean, it shows itself, the challenge shows itself in different ways in different communities. But I mean, what you've showed us tonight is, you know, is really inspiring. This is a incredible story. Are there any other questions? I don't know. I have to look in the chat. I think something's coming up.
Yes, David has his hand up.
David, you want to go?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. So how can we identify and delineate our environmental justice areas on different parts of the island?
So that's very interesting that you asked. I organize with LARG, Brookhaven Landfill Action Remediation Group. I'm also the climate justice organizer for Long Island Progressive Coalition. And New York State is in the process of developing new map for disadvantaged communities. And so I will be hosting a workshop for that on the 31st. So I can send you information on that. But then the new map is actually a draft right now, and it is out on the New York State website. I can share that link with you as well. You can see the other areas of Long Island and New York State that have disadvantaged communities.
Oh, please do. Thank you.
And for the purpose of that workshop, we are looking to ensure that the draft map is correct, or at least as correct as it can be, because Long Island, we have we are highly segregated, but our communities that are disproportionately affected by climate and environmental injustices are very small, and they're linked and closely in close proximity to affluent areas. So how to design a map that pinpoints neighborhoods such as North Bellport that is also connected to Bellport Village that has a very high income and looks totally different than the community of North Bellport, which is 13 blocks, you know? So it's a challenge. It's hard to do. It's a hard thing to do. I think the Climate Justice Working Group that has been tasked to do that did an amazing job. However, Long Island has, we have different challenges, in this workshop that we're putting together for the 31st is looking to try to answer some of those questions of how to get to the most vulnerable people on the island.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Any other questions for Monique or for Claire, actually, at this point?
And
So much
Maria Shapiro is here and said in the chat. I don't know if she's able to unmute. Maybe not, but she writes in the chat that she was working at the lab at Brookhaven National Lab in the mid-90s, and it was a big issue. She can't believe it's still ongoing. Thank you, Monique, for your work.
Thank you. Yes. We've been fighting like the Dickens for 50 years. We have not had time periods where we weren't fighting this thing. So we are still
300 feet. 300 feet.
300 feet.
It's insane.
Well, it affects everyone on the island, on the planet, but your community is certainly on the front line. So that's where to be able to fight that battle when it's threatening your community and the health of the community is something that we all need to support. And I thank you for coming on and sharing that with us. We certainly enjoyed our visit with you last week, and we want to keep up this joint fight. I mean, we really need to do that. And even though the challenges are different in all communities, and certainly the 3 communities that we've talked about tonight, that it's all the same fight ultimately. It's just the battles are, engaged in different ways in different places. So
yeah, I say compost like your life depends on it, because our life does.
well, all of our lives do, but some more immediately than others. So it's something that it seems overwhelming, and people say, "What can I do?" But we have to fight. I mean, there are things that we have to fight for today, but the fight will come to you if you don't take the fight to where it's going on. So there are a lot of different things we can do, and I think that I want to urge everybody that's on the call, particularly if you're in the Port Washington area, to reach out to us at Transition Town Port Washington. We really didn't have any opportunity to talk about some of the progress we've made. When we originally met with Ron and Michelle, and Claire went up to Scarsdale with some of our people from the Solid Waste Management Authority. So we're starting to make progress, but as we talked about, we need those volunteers. And people will come to us in different ways. I mean, there are some people that can afford to spend more time or have a particular interest, but whatever you can do will help. So please reach out to us. And I think, I learned a lot tonight from both Monique and Ron and Michelle, because they're great organizers and they've accomplished a tremendous amount. And there's still a lot more to do. I mean, even in places like Scarsdale, there are more people that get signed up. And, Monique and her colleagues certainly have a lot to do, but they've won some very significant battles, and they've organized in the community and built on the community. And that should be inspiring to us. I mean, we can make a difference, and, we just need to bring more people into it. So I think we're close to closing. Is there anything else that I failed to mention? I, again, want to thank Landmark on Main Street and my colleagues at Transition Town, and Monique Fitzgerald, Ron and Michelle from Scarsdale, and all of you who've stayed with us. We obviously try to crowd too much in because there's just too many important things to discuss. And, the connection between the battles that we're fighting and the work that we need to do, is clear, but it was a lot to digest tonight, I think. So I just want to thank anybody. And if anybody has any final questions or thoughts, we can run over a few minutes.
Yes, there was a question from Beth Horn regarding food insecurity and whether the group is addressing food insecurity with the Compost project in the community.
Well, I can answer that. There's a program in Port Washington, which is
no. This was actually directed at Monique.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead, Monique.
Sure. So our community composting program is in a community garden. So we are looking to utilize the garden space and the beds that we are growing food to help with insecurity, food insecurity in the neighborhood. So those are our aims.
And I know that, yes, we'll be following up with email, with resources, with links, with action items, something we can do in solidarity and support. We look forward to continue this mutual support, the reciprocity. We all breathe the same air too. We need to be in this together. And I think we're going to run out of space out here as well. Covanta is burning our trash in Westbury. in this trash to
Yeah.
energy project. That's really not environmentally, at least not one of my climate solutions. I also know that we're moving yard waste. We're trucking it out of Long Island. So these transfer stations are just such a big problem in terms of emissions first, but moving even organic waste off an island that's eroding seems like insanity. Yeah.
Yeah. I just to finish my interruption is that there is a program to feed, to grow vegetables and for the food pantry here in Port Washington, Science Museum and several other locations in Port Washington are growing food this season. This is the third year, although the program under the direction of Plant a Row has been going on for many years, but it's been particularly focused in those locations the last several years. So it's a good way to raise consciousness and raise vegetables at the same time. All right, so we could go on all night, but I think we're going to have to wrap it up. I think that our partners have been very kind with their time. And so Hilda, if we're ready to wrap, we can all say goodnight. Is that okay, you think? Okay, everybody.
Thanks, Michelle. You're still with us.
Yeah, thank you for staying on. That's
You're
great.
welcome. I couldn't drop off after listening to Monique. I had to.
Yeah.
And
hear
I
what's
wanted
going
to
on.
I wanted to make reference also to Joy, who was here with her important
Joy.
work in her community, and she
Joy
left
Doherty.
already, but we'll be
Yeah.
including links to her too, and also to our mentor Domingo Morales. I put some links out there. He is like a compost guru and someone who inspired us a few years ago at the Red Hook community compost site. And there's a recent New York Times article about, so you can see, I put it in the chat, where his important work is done.
Incredible story. Yeah.
Incredible teacher, Domingo Morales.
Yeah. I mean,
do you know him, Monique? Do you know Domingo?
No, I do know Joy though. Joy introduced us to Claire.
Oh, good. Yes.
Yeah.
We're compost families.
Yes.
We're all connected.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah. I encourage everyone to read that article about Domingo Morales. We visited him just before the pandemic started down in Red Hook, a cold January day. And his backstory is really incredible and inspiring. And he is just, through his own effort, blossomed into such a leader. He's really inspirational and really accomplishes a lot in New York City. Worth reading.
Yes. And I also wanted to say hi to Melanie Darico, who took the time to come and join us in the middle of your busy time. Hi, Melanie.
Hi, I'm always glad to join Transition Town and all of your amazing programs. I'm sorry I was a little bit late this evening, but I did catch a lot of what Monique said. And hi, Monique, it's nice to see you again. And of course, Claire's amazing work. I'm so sorry that I missed Michelle and Joy. I'll have to catch the video, the recording, but Paul is one of my favorites also. So I'll say hi to Paul. I'm so excited to be among amazing community organizers and activists like all of you who are really doing the on the ground work. And I'm excited for our future together. So thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Always. Okay,
and that was the final sound.
I thought that was going to be me with